Do you know what makes me special? I'm a queer. Woo! And I'm a witch!
My friend Sydney said, kind of remarkable how queer went from being an actual insult to a trendy term utilized by boring straight people who are desperate to build a personality around their made-up sexual identity. I mean, I couldn't agree more, and I'm a lesbian. Also kind of horrible how I, an actual LGBT person, do not feel comfortable at LGBT pride events anymore. It's turned completely political, and honestly, it's very much become a bunch of crazy leftists, half-naked, creepy men, and queer kids who are actually straight but hate the idea of being boring.
The world has spoken. The queers are coming. Non-binaries.
Rudy said, getting really bored of straight people calling themselves homophobic slurs now. I actually have a lot to say about this, so welcome to another psychological deep dive. Okay, first of all, being straight is not boring. Contrast is a good thing. Having polar opposites exist, whether it's the political spectrum, sexual orientation, gender, feelings versus facts, is just one way we can learn from each other. One example might be people on the far left can learn stability from people on the far right. People on the far right possibly can learn empathy from people on the far left. This person apparently was on Eurovision, a show that I do not watch, which is a talent show that she lost and then went like on a media tour saying that she's non-binary and queer and she's proud of the queer community, all while sitting next to her boyfriend.
What makes me special? Come on! And I love art, I love drama, I love theater. I'm gonna give you a show. I forgot the rest of your question because I'm dissociated.
Funnily enough, I think the majority of these people are actually quite sad and not crazy. And sometimes the two are very difficult to be able to tell apart. And I find that there are basically 5 main reasons why the current people that are identifying as LGBT, that are not actually queer in any sense of the word, are identifying as such. Number 1, fear of being the same. Just a few years ago, actual LGBT people used to be afraid of being different. We literally had entire not-for-profit campaigns, such as the It Gets Better Project, championing the idea that it's okay to be different, it's okay to be yourself. Now it's reversed completely. Imagine, just for a second, being so afraid of being straight and boring, or being an artist and thinking that you have to be this weird, crazy person in order to actually fulfill your dream, right? That you need to claim and appropriate a minority experience. And what's interesting about all of this is that in both cases, what people are actually afraid of being is themselves. It's okay to be gay, it's okay to be straight and boring. You're not boring. The audiobook that I'm currently listening to says the highest form of human intelligence is to practice observation, not judgment. And honestly, I know I seem judgy as fuck, which, yeah, I can be. Like, I am a human being. I'm not like a perfect spirit, right? I'm not a perfect soul. I'm not I'm in a human body. I have flaws. But the truth is, I speak about these issues because I feel like they're extremely teachable moments. Why are people choosing to identify as something when they are not said thing? And that brings me to number 2, being lower on the social totem pole.
Tired of straight white men having the power and everything, and it's like we don't have the same privileges that are offered to straight white men.
Talk to me about what some of those privileges are that, straight white men have that you don't have. Talk to me about that.
I don't really know.
In an effort to bring equality and in some cases, in many cases, equity, woke activists in society recently have restructured, let's say, the old totem pole, which had like cis straight white men at the top and black trans women at the bottom. And this new one has cis straight white people at the bottom and black trans or people of color, whatever, at the top. Which explains why so many women just don't want to identify or be straight anymore, because now they're at the bottom of the totem pole, right?
Hi, my name's Queenie and my pronouns are they, them. When I post about my gender identity and my sexuality, when I say that I don't want any labels, that is not an invitation for you to speculate on who I am or what I am. It's not a guessing game for you to play over whether I'm a girl or a boy, about what's in my pants, or if I'm pan, or bi, or trixic, or homoflexible. You don't need to fully understand the nuances of gender identity or sexuality to know that each person knows who they are better than you ever will.
Instead of commenting on this part specifically, I want to read part of this article that I found on X recently that I think is absolutely brilliant. 100%. I'm going to include it, link in the description. Go read it. It's a kind of a long read, but it's worth it. And it's called The Euphoria of Becoming Someone You Don't Hate. Firstly, it talks about nature versus nurture and how we're not talking about actual people born with gender dysphoria that winds up not going away, winds up sticking around. We're not talking about those types of people. Instead, we're talking about nurture. In this article, the writer mainly talks specifically about gender dysphoria, but like while I'm reading this, exchange the word gender dysphoria for identifying as queer even though you're not. And it kind of honestly makes the exact same sense. He goes on to say, these are the environmental factors largely responsible for producing the dissociation between expression of self and biological sex, upbringing in childhood, current and past physical and mental health, nutrition, lifestyle, and social circle. I completely agree so far. Scrolling down the page, it says, identity, resentment, and dissociation. Gender dysphoria, or identifying as queer when you're really not, in nearly all cases is intimately linked to helplessness. But the path from helplessness to transitioning or identifying as queer when you're not is a long and complicated one. It is no coincidence that people experiencing gender dysphoria, or again, identifying as queer when you're not, have alarmingly high rates of anxiety, depression, trauma, and suicidality, I can't talk. Both before and after pursuing any form of transition. This is important. We are all, in a very real sense, in a relationship with ourselves, with our identities. Just like our relationships with other people, our bodies, and our minds often behave in ways we don't understand and don't feel in control of. When we experience severe or prolonged helplessness, anxiety, depression, or trauma, our relationships with ourselves deteriorates and becomes abusive and neglectful. When our relationship with our identity is in shambles, our bodies and minds yearn and seek for relief, repair, of course, right? We're always trying to grow and heal ourselves. This is why people who fall into mentally unwell states often seem to present as entirely different versions of themselves, both physically and mentally. Human beings cannot thrive without a sense of identity, as doing so is to constantly exist in a severe state of helplessness, isolation, confusion, and suffering. Naturally, a person who loathes their identity will search for a new one, at the very least, another version of the one they are in an abusive and hateful or neglectful relationship with, whether that's somebody else or themselves. This is the main issue and takeaway from this article, which brings me to point number 3, ignoring or avoiding their actual lessons. In identifying as queer when you are simply not, you are creating problems that were not yours to fix in the first place, or were not there to help you grow or learn about yourself in the first place. You wind up avoiding the lessons that you are here to learn, that your soul, this is what I believe, your soul comes here, goes in a body, and wants to learn the lessons that that experience is going to give them in this lifetime. When you are avoiding your own lessons and taking on new ones, you actually create more issues internally and externally. You're delaying your growth, you're creating more negative energy, more sadness, and you see it, right? You ever notice how these woke types always seem angry and sad? Obviously, I've talked about this for years now, and I've wondered, I know many of you have wondered why, and I honestly think that this is the reason. Number 4, taking the easy way out. The article goes on to say, if you had to guess, what do you think a person in this state would do if the promise of relief was offered to them by simply adopting a new identity, one which purports to represent the person they were always meant to be, immediately solving all their problems? Of course it's not. One which offers the promise of a fresh start. Would they take it? I think most people probably would, because it's the easy way out. At least they think so. But A, this isn't actually true, right? And B, we're going to go back to number 3. If you are avoiding this, you're creating more problems. And guess what? If you delay your own lessons, I can tell you from experience, they will only come back around at you later on, much harder. What if by doing so not only allowed them to replace the identity they see as responsible for their suffering, but also provided other benefits as well? Adoption of a new identity which they and others admire, respect, love, feel confident in, bestowing a sense of community, approval, validation, feeling special, unique, and loved. If that is not the epitome of what's going on right now. My friend Buck Angel did an interview recently with somebody that no longer identifies as trans and is detransitioning. They no longer see themselves as queer.
First of all, I would have wished that my younger self never got into this at all in the first place, because even though I didn't medicalize and I don't have the consequences of medical harm, I have a lot of stunted psychological development that I'm going to need to make up for when I'm now going into my mid. But what I would say is that I want my story to serve as inspiration.
The article goes on to say, say, these people are not locating the identities they were meant to have. They are attempting to escape the identities they see as responsible for producing their suffering and to replace them with more desirable identities. And like I said before, again, if you are delaying your own lessons, they're only going to come back harder and bite you in the ass. More so than before.
I am genderqueer, transmasc, and queer.
What's transmasc?
Transmasc is like people under the non-binary umbrella identifying like or presenting masc.
Masculine?
Yeah.
What about you?
I'm trans and my sexuality is unlabeled. I use he, him pronouns.
Yeah, and I use he, they pronouns.
The body language alone just makes me feel like, it makes me feel uncomfortable because I know that they are uncomfortable. These are the types of people we're talking about. The article then goes on to talk about sexual abuse and how that can also be a big factor with people identifying as queer. We know that already. And some people avoid their problems by creating new ones. We also see this in relationships, right? And some of them run from them altogether. If I were a boy or girl, I could have stopped it. If I were a boy or girl, I wouldn't have even been in this situation in the first place. And sometimes it is as simple as number 5, resenting gender or gender role or gender expectations. You're a woman and you're supposed to act and think and be and dress and whatever like a woman. On the other side of the coin, it would be a man. If you don't like being masculine, you're queer. And you're not really a man. Obviously, these things, like, I'm joking. In my opinion, this is very sexist. It is not allowing for the expansion of what males and females could be. But somehow we are supposed to believe that this is a progressive idea. But look where it's gotten us all.
Now, I identify as trans and genderqueer, and to me that means I like to play with gender, I like to problematize gender. I like to confront gender norms in how I present and how I move through the world. I feel female and male. I feel both and neither one. And so many of the labels that we use in this area feel equally authentic and inauthentic. And I simply can't tell where one gender ends and another begins.
I know that it can't be just me at being completely annoyed by this person's it's giving very much, I'm spiritually above you. It's giving that. And that's actually the opposite of spirituality. Like spirituality, it's not saying that we're better than you. We just might be on a different path or at a different point in our life and learning our lessons. But we're not like, it's not this. Spirituality is this. You might be here, I might be here. It doesn't mean I'm better than you. It means I'm over here because I learned these lessons and maybe you haven't. But you know what? At one point I was here. Random funny tweet of the day, by the way. My friend Blair, she said, you know this has nothing to do with gay people because gay people would never design something this ugly. And she was talking about the constant changing, queer, non-binary, woke identity, whatever, changing of the flag. It's just a hot mess, okay? Can we just say that? It is what it is. I'm done. I'm like completely, I'm perpetually annoyed at this point, to be honest. I know that we're using these little lessons right now that I'm learning and we're bringing back to you, and we're all learning and teaching each other. I post a ton of videos like this on my TikTok, being, you know, of course I'm critiquing, but I'm also teaching. Go and follow me on TikTok if you haven't already. I'll have that link in the description below, and other than that, I will see you guys back here on Sunday with a brand new video. Until then, I love you, love yourselves. Keep calling out bullshit.